This week's Parsha is Parshat Beha'alotecha, page 774. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Daber laHaron, speak to Aaron, Yamar love and say to him, Beha'alotecha es haneros, when you kindle the candles, el mul pnei hamenorah, towards the face of the menorah, Ye'iru shivas haneros, shall the 7 candles burn. So Rashi tells us that this pasuk is where Hashem tells Moshe to tell Aaron that the way the fire, the way the candles, the way the wicks of the menorah in the Mishkan are supposed to be set up is in a way where you've got 3 candles on each side of the middle candle. The middle candle will actually be considered being part of the actual body of the menorah itself, with 3 branches coming out on each side, and that the 3 branches on each side, the wicks that are in the candles of each one, have to be bent towards the middle, so that you've got the middle candle burning regular, and the other 3 on each side are the wicks are tilted towards the middle and burning, so to speak, towards the middle. That's what the mitzvah is telling us. What's the point of this? So Rashi tells us that the purpose of having them all facing towards the middle is kadei shelo yemru la'orehu tzarich, so that people shouldn't say that the reason why they're lighting the menorah in the Mishkan is because Hashem needs the light. If Hashem would need the light in the Mishkan, then they should be burning in a way that the light spreads the most that it can. By going ahead and having all the wicks to the side burning towards the middle, you're actually minimizing the light, the spreading of the light. And the purpose of lighting the menorah in such a way, Rashi says, is to show that people should not come to say that Hashem needs the light. The Sefornu has another explanation to the reason why the menorah is set up in this way, and he explains. He's actually also coming to answer. Well, okay. The Sefornu says like this. The Sefornu says you've got the middle branch with its candle. And then you have all the other ones that are, the other 6 are now bent and burning towards the middle. And when you have el mul pnei hamenorah, when you have the candles, lighting the candles towards the middle, Ye'iru shivas haneros, then you have all 7 candles burning together in a way, the yashviu are elyon liyisrael. When now you have the menorah set up in this manner, where you have all 7 candles burning in this way, that the middle one is straight, the other 3 are tilted and burning towards the middle. That is how the menorah is to be set up in a way that now, Yashbiu are Elyon Yisrael. Not only will they be burning, giving out a regular physical light, but now they will bring down Yashbiu are Elyon Yisrael. They will bring down a upper light, a spiritual light from above to the Jewish people. Sheyeru. Because the setup of the menorah is to show the following. Hayosar hayaminim v'ar hasma'alim mechuvan u'paine al-kor hakanohem tzai. What the fact that you have the candles to the right and to the left, all facing towards the middle, shehu ikar menorah, which is the main part of the menorah, v'shekain roi shekavanas hay mayaminim ha'iskim echayo'elam, Bas me'ilim ha'oiskim ha'chayisha ha'oizim l'mayiminim tiyeh lahafik ratzonah kal yisbarach. The candles, the lights of the menorah to the right and to the left, represent people that the Torah describes are to the right or to the left. Now this doesn't mean conservative liberal. It means mayaminim, yamin always shows more strength, small shows weaker strength. So therefore, the ones that are called the ones that are to the right are the people that are involved in Torah study. The ones to the left are the people involved in worldly pursuits. The candles to the right and the candles to the left, all now burning towards the middle, represent that whichever side you are on, or whichever way of life you are partaking from, your focus is one. Your focus is the middle. Your focus is to bring out the will of Hashem. Whether your task is to be studying Torah, or whether your task is to be involved in worldly pursuits, and those involved in worldly pursuits are enabling the ones to the right, the ones involved in Torah to do so, whichever task you are doing, whatever you're doing, you're both focused towards the middle. You're both focused towards the same goal. And that same goal is to bring out the will of Hashem, and to exalt His name together. As we find that the Jewish people actually accepted upon themselves, when the Jewish people said, Vayanu kol ha'am yachdav vayomru, and the whole nation responded together and said, Kol asher dibra Hashem na'aseh. Whatever Hashem speaks, whatever Hashem says, we will do. Koloimar, what does that mean? What was that declaration? Whatever Hashem says, we will do. Bein kulanu nashim kavanasei. Bein kulanu, amongst all of us, collectively, we shall fulfill His intention. That means that there's going to be people that they're going to be having their individual tasks. Some will be more dedicated to spiritual pursuits. Some will spend more time involved in worldly pursuits. But together, collectively, they have to fulfill the will of Hashem, bring out the will of Hashem, and exalt Hashem's name together. Because that's what they're doing. You've got those that are studying Torah, you've got those that are supporting those who study Torah, and each one doing their task is focused towards the same goal. That goal being to fulfill the will of Hashem and exalt His name together. So the fact that the menorah is set up in this way, that you've got the 3 lights on the right, 3 lights on the left, all burning towards the middle, represents everyone focusing towards one goal. Everyone collectively doing Hashem's will. Whether you're on the right and your task is the right, representing those who are studying Torah, whether you're on the left, those who are involved in the worldly pursuits, seemingly the pursuit on the left, so to speak, the not as strong pursuit, as long as whichever pursuit you're doing, whichever task you're doing, you have to be you're all focused towards one goal, to bring out the will of Hashem. And when that happens, when that's what happens, then you've got the Or Elyon, you've got a light from above that comes upon the Jewish people. So according to Sefornu, you've got the menorah set up in this way, that the 3 to the right, 3 to the left are focused towards the middle, representing that whatever task you have in life, collectively, everyone is focused towards one goal, which is to bring out the will of Hashem.
Is the middle light a shamas?
No, the middle light is actually, the menorah is really it's the actual body of the menorah, and the branches all come out from it. And that menorah part has a place for a wick and oil also. So it's not a shamas. So it's 7 lights all together, but you've got 1 light in the menorah, in the primary part of the candelabra, and you've got 3 branches on each side.
So are there 6 days, or the Shabbos is Shabbos?
No Shabbos. It's 7 candles. You've got 7 candles. You've got the main one in the middle, according to Seferdu, representing Hashem, and you've got the 3 on each side representing the different parts of Klal Yisrael, those involved in the pursuit of Torah, those who are involved in worldly pursuits, but they're all focused on one goal, which is serving Hashem.
So I like the message, but I find that sharing like yours and other vein, that there seems to be a message that every Jew should spend all his time learning Torah if he can. And even if he can't, he should. And that in conflict with saying there are some people who are doing the more mundane things, and some who are learning.
I mean, we have the tribe of Zebulun. The tribe of Zebulun, Yaakov Avinu, blessed them to be seafarers. That was what they were supposed to do. It didn't mean they never learned Torah. It meant they learned Torah also. But they had the task, they had the mission of supporting those who were constantly involved in Torah study.
And I'm not just, I understand that, but I'm saying that the message I seem to get from a lot of shiurim or drushes is the opposite of that. That comes out, this comes out, I understand, I hear that. Yet the dominant message seems to be drop everything and just learn Torah. So how do I resolve that seeming conflict? You know?
I can't speak for other people, but the only thing I can tell you is that, you know, a person has to see what they can do. Mm-hmm. You know, a person has to see what they can do. If a person can, you know, everybody has to look at themselves and see what's possible for them to do. Whatever they're going to be doing, they have to make sure that they devote some time to Torah study.
Oh yeah.
And if a person can, the more time they can devote, the more time they should devote. But a person has to look at themselves and see what are they cut out for? What can they do? What do their circumstances allow? If their circumstances don't allow them, for whatever it may be able to learn all the time, that doesn't mean that they're not part of the mission they're not part of that mission of collectively bringing out Hashem's will. That through what they're doing, they can enable others to do so. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Let's move on now. So I mentioned to you that Rashi says that the reason why the menorah was set up in the way that it was in order to minimize the spread of the light, so that no one should say that the light is there because Hashem needs it. Now, I would like to share with you a very interesting Medrash Tanchuma and discussion regarding the light of the menorah, where we see that there is this idea stressed that the light of the menorah is not for the Rebbeinu Shalom, but it's for us. Where Rashi is saying the setup is to minimize to minimize the light, so that no one should think that Hashem needs the light. So who does need the light? What is the light for? So there's a Medrash Tanchuma in Parshas Emor. In Parshas Emor we have the mitzvah of taking the 4 minim on Sukkot. L'kachtem lechem b'yom harishon. The Torah says, and you shall take on the first day of Sukkot the esrog and the lulav, the adasim and the arubis. And the Medrash Tanchuma interestingly goes through a number of examples where the Torah tells us to take something. And one of the examples where the Torah tells us to take something is, Hashem says, Amarti lachem, I have said to you, v'yikchu elecha shemen zayezach. This is Parshas Tetzaveh. Hashem says to Moshe, you shall take unto yourself pure olive oil. V'lama, why are you taking it? Alois ner tamid, to kindle the constant light, the light of the menorah that has to burn constantly. V'chi armi shalachem ani tzarech. Do I need light from you? Ela b'shvil lishmar es nafshei seichem. The light of the menorah is in order to guard your souls. Shenim shula hanefesh b'ner. Because we find that the nefesh, the soul, is compared to a candle. Shenemar, as the pasuk states, ner Hashem nishmas adam. The candle of God is the soul of man. So because man's soul is compared to a candle, the Medrash says that the purpose of the light of the menorah, the purpose of the neiros, the candles of the menorah, is in order lishmar es nafshei seichem, to guard your souls. There is something beneficial to the soul from the light of the menorah. And the basis for that is the fact that we find a pasuk in the book of Mishlei that compares man's neshama, man's soul, to a candle. Now, we do find that not only by the lighting of the menorah that we make a relationship between a candle and a soul, but we have many practices that we do in which we make a connection, we relate a candle to a soul. The earliest example of this is what's brought down about Yom Kippur, unrelated to Yizkor, that on Yom Kippur a person should light a candle in memory of his parents. This comes from early sources. You light a candle on Yom Kippur as an atonement for the soul of your deceased relatives, your deceased parents. And this medrash is used as a source for that custom. Because this medrash says that the candle, that the light of the menorah, is to guard the souls of the Jewish people. That means that there's something about the light of a candle that is beneficial to a soul. And based on that, there is this practice of lighting a candle on Yom Kippur as an atonement for a deceased parent, a deceased relative's soul. We know also that we light a candle for a soul when a person is sitting Shiva, on a yard site, Yizkor. There is this practice that there's some relationship, some connection, of some benefit that a soul, actually one might think that the reason why we're lighting the candle, it's a memory, it's to remember them, which is true. But according to this, there's something, the Medrash Tanchum is telling us, is that there's something about a shmira, there's something about a guard, a benefit to the soul, that comes from the light. Now the Medrash is talking about the light of the menorah. But even the light of the menorah is benefiting the neshama because of the based on the pasuk that says the soul of man is the candle of God. There's a connection between light and the neshama. That's why the light of the menorah is as the Medrash says, it is to guard your souls. And we find that we do light a candle very often in memory or as an in connection relationship to a soul, to a neshama. There is a fascinating Rabbeinu Bechaya in Parshas Truma by the mitzvah of menorah that sheds a little bit more light on this topic. I'm not going to be able to completely explain it to you, and it's esoteric, it's Kabbalistic, but it's something very interesting to hear. It's a fascinating idea. And the Rabbeinu Bechaya is talking about the mitzvah of the menorah in Parshas Truma, and when he first begins explaining the mitzvah of the menorah, the Rabbeinu Bechaya begins. The point of the menorah, according to Pshat, according to simple explanation, is that a light always adds respect and awe to a place. By lighting a candle, it creates a certain type of atmosphere, but an atmosphere of respect, of awe. And therefore, the menorah is lit in the Mishkan, in the Tabernacle of Beis HaMikdash, to add respect and awe, and an atmosphere of awe to this building. This is why the Rabbeinu Bechaya says the menorah was not located on the side of the curtain together with the Aron, where it couldn't be seen. It had to be on the other side of the curtain, in the Heichel, in the sanctuary, in the Kodesh, so that people should see the light, and that will instill in them that respect that they're supposed to get from this lit room. But then he writes, V'yadua, it is known, Ki aneshama nehenis ba'adlakas haneres, that the soul benefits from the kindling of the lights. V'hi mishaleches b'idunei ha'hoid v'asimcha, and it experiences great joy. Umispashetes umisracheves, and it spreads out and it broadens. B'toich hanoas ha'oira, because of the benefit of the light. The light gives some kind of a growth to the neshama. There's a joy to the neshama. It spreads, it grows from light. Because the neshama is a type of light. And because of this reason, it is drawn after the light, because they're the same they're the same type of thing. Even though the candlelight is a physical light, and the neshama is a spiritual light. So even though one is spiritual, one is physical, they are considered the same in. They're considered the same type, the same species. And therefore, the neshama is drawn to it. And as he says, the neshama is drawn, the neshama rejoices, the neshama broadens, the neshama grows from physical light.
So right now you're talking about a living person, because before that you're talking about deceased.
Right. It says the neshama. So all it says. You're right. You're right in this sense that in this sense of the context of the Rabbeinu Bechaya, he's talking about the menorah, and he's talking about the neshama in the physical body.
Right.
Correct. However, the commentaries apply it to a deceased neshama also. The truth, if you think about it, if it helps a living neshama, it should help a deceased neshama, because it's the connection to the neshama. It doesn't sound like it's the body that's doing something here. The Ben Ish Chai, in his Tshuva Sefer Torah Lishma, cites this Rabbeinu Bechaya when he explains the custom of lighting a candle when a person sits shiva. And he also adds a little bit more. He adds more explanation based on a Gemara in Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas, Tapim Gimel Amid Beis, asks the following question: Minayin shemavarchen al hareach. From where do we know that we make a bracha over fragrances? You have certain brachas we say over fragrances. So what's the basis for that? Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Kol hanashama tahalel ka. We say this in davening every day. Kol hanashama tahalel ka. Every soul shall praise Hashem. So the Gemara understands this pasuk of every soul should praise Hashem is referring to a benefit of the soul that it now makes a blessing for it. So the Gemara says, what is that type of benefit that the neshama benefits from, that we can say it's the neshama that is benefiting from this and therefore giving praise? That's fragrance. Fragrance is considered a benefit of the neshama. The neshama is enjoying the fragrance. And the neshama because the neshama enjoys the fragrance, therefore we make a bracha for it. That's what the Gemara says. So the Ben Ish Chai says, if we consider the neshama benefiting from fragrance, then light even more so. Because basically the idea is that the less physical something is, the more spiritual by definition it is. And therefore, although it is something physical, it exists in the physical world, because it is less physical, the neshama, which is completely spiritual, can benefit from it. There is that ability for the neshama to benefit from something that is physical. But because it's not so physical, it's not as physical as other things, therefore it's by nature more spiritual, and the neshama can benefit from it also. So therefore it comes out that the light of a candle has actual benefit for a neshama. Which is why in all these cases we have this custom of lighting a candle for a neshama. Because these are the situations where the neshama benefits the most from the light, and therefore we light it. The Ben Ish Chai says, in this entire Lishma, the Ben Ish Chai says that the most beneficial place for lighting the candle is by the grave. By the grave. I don't know if he means to exclude the house, but he talks about by the grave. Because there again he says a concept. That a neshama, there's always something of the neshama by the grave. So basically now you're lighting the candle the closest to the neshama. It's most beneficial. He also says that it's a very proper minhag to light a candle for a neshama in a shul. And that's based on this Medrash Tanchuma. The Medrash Tanchuma talks about the menorah benefiting the neshama, guarding the neshamas. So therefore, by extension, we say lighting a candle in the shul as the menorah was lit in the Beis Hamikdash, and the shul is a mikdash ma'at. The shul is considered a miniature mikdash, a miniature sanctuary. That therefore, there too, lighting a candle will benefit the neshama. But all of these are, and it's interesting. In my house, I never saw anything other than a yahrzeit candle in a house. I never saw it in a shul, never saw it on a grave. And as time goes on, I've been in shuls and I see people lighting a yahrzeit candle in a shul, by a grave, constantly see yahrzeit candles. You figure, okay, it's a custom, it's some kind of custom. But now, based on this, I've learned that it really has there's a lot of understanding behind it. There's a lot of depth behind it. The light of the candle is not just to remember, it's actually to benefit the neshama. And in certain places, it benefits the neshama more than others. And so Rashi tells us that the setup of the menorah was to show that Hashem doesn't need the light. And the Medrash teaches us what is the light for? The light is for our neshama. It benefits our neshama. It's a shmira. It's a protection for our neshama. And that is why we have this custom in general of lighting a candle for a neshama. Because it's a benefit for the neshama. The neshama rejoices, the neshama grows with it.
So, but the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash or in the Mishkan, the only ones it seems to me that would ever see it are Kohanim. Nobody else ever goes in there, right? Certainly, regular B'nai Yisrael never go in. The Levim even only go when they take it down. So the only people actually enter.
That is true.
Can they see from the outside? Can you see the
there are
light
times
from
where
the
people,
outside?
it's very possible.
Yeah.
It actually says that on Yontif they used to lift up the curtain of the Kodesh HaKadosh and people could see see the Aron. So it was possible to see in. There were times where it was possible to see in. Okay. Let's now move on to the next thing. Rashi, the very first Rashi in the Parsha, explains the connection between last week's Parsha and this week's Parsha. Last week's Parsha was the Parsha of the Nesiim. by the Chanukas HaMizbeach, by the inauguration of the Mishkan. Each one of the princes of the tribes brought a set of sacrifices of gifts for the inauguration of the Mishkan. And after that, we have Hashem telling Moshe to tell Aaron that when you light the menorah in this fashion. What is the connection between the Chanukas HaNesiyim, the gift of the Nesiyim, and this week's parsha of telling Aaron how to light the menorah? So Rashi tells us, based on a medrash, Aaron Chanukas HaNesiyim, when Aaron saw the gift of the Nesiyim, Chol she'ozdaitai, he became very distressed. Shelo hayim ma'ama Chanukah, because he nor his tribe were involved in this inauguration, in this gift in honor of the beginning of the Mishkan. Lo yuv lo shivtai, not he nor his tribe were involved, and he felt very bad about it. Omar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbeinu Shalom said to him, Shalcha gadolim mishalahem, your portion is greater than theirs. Sha'atomadlik u'meitiv as haneres, for you will be lighting the candles, the menorah. So Aaron feels bad that he did not participate like the other Nesiyim in the gift towards the inauguration of the Mishkan. And Hashem says, don't worry about it. Don't feel bad. Your portion is greater. Your part of the Mishkan is greater because you're going to be lighting the menorah. So the Ramban brings down Rashi and has a number of questions. Number one, basically, what is the meaning? How is Hashem comforting Aaron? If he's comforting Aaron by saying, well, they participated in the inauguration, but you're going to be doing everything in the Mishkan. You're going to be doing all the service in the Mishkan. So then why only talk about the menorah? Talk about all the karbanos. Talk about everything that Aaron does. Talk about Yom Kippur when Aaron goes into Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why am I talking about the menorah?
Well,
that's question number one.
The Leviim also and the other Kohanim. I mean, they also didn't bring gifts. The whole tribe of
Correct,
Levi.
but he was representative of
one,
that.
but
he's the one who would be representing them.
Okay.
But again, if you want to go ahead and comfort him because he's doing the avodah, there's a lot more to talk about than just the menorah. Number two, what is the reason that Aaron felt bad? Aaron was upset that he didn't participate in the inauguration like everybody else. He didn't. He had 7 days that he was trained, and he brought karbanos every day. Or I shouldn't say every day. There was all the karbanos of the miluim. There were the sacrifices that he had to bring for the inauguration of the Mishkan, to inaugurate his being the Kohen Gadol. So it's not like he didn't participate. He also brought sacrifices.
So why was he upset?
So what was he upset for? So the Ramban says, if you'll say, well, maybe you'll say that he's upset because those karbanos that he brought by the miluim when he was being trained by the inauguration, those were obligatory. But he didn't voluntarily bring something. So the Ramban says, if that's what's bothering him, then what's the response? Then what's Hashem saying to him? The menorah? The menorah is also an obligation. So what's the response? What's the answer? So therefore, the Ramban says that this medrash that Rashi is bringing is actually alluding to, is not referring to the regular service in the Mishkan. It is specifically referring to the menorah, and it's referring to the menorah of Hanukkah. That's what it's referring to. When Hashem says to Aaron that your portion is greater than theirs, because you're going to light the candles, it's not talking about the regular lighting of the candles. Rather, it's talking about the eventual lighting of the candles to be done by his descendants in the times of Hanukkah. And the Ramban quotes two sources that we're referring to Hanukkah over here. And that is, first he calls them Megillah Starmel Rabbeinu Nisim. Arish Rabbeinu Nisim had a version of a medrash that the medrash says like this. Aaron was upset that he did not offer like the rest of the princes. So Hashem said to Moshe, tell Aaron, Yesh Chanukah Acheres, there'll be another Chanukah, there'll be another dedication, Sheyesh Ba'adlakas Neiris, that will involve the burning of, the lighting of candles, Vani Oiseba li Yisrael, and I shall do that, I shall perform that for the Jewish people, Ayadei Banecha, through your children, through your descendants. Nisim, miracles, Teshua and salvation, V'Chanukah and dedication, Shekruya al Shema, that'll be on their name. The Chanukas b'nei HaChashmonai, and that is the dedication of the Beis HaMikdash done by the Chashmonaim, by the Chanukah miracle. And that's why we have the juxtaposition of the end of last week's parsha, which is the dedication of the Mishkan and the gifts of the Nesiim, with this week's parsha of the menorah. So this medrash is saying that how is Hashem comforting Aaron? Aaron, you're upset that you weren't involved in the Chanukah, in the dedication. Okay, your descendants will be involved in the dedication. They will bring about a very special dedication, a dedication that will have the lighting of candles involved. And which Chanukah is that? That is the Chanukah of the Bnei Chashmonai. Now, what's interesting, according to this medrash, is, it would seem to me that it sounds like the main point is, Aaron, you weren't involved in the dedication now. Your descendants will be involved in the dedication later. They'll bring about a dedication later. But the pasuk talks about menorah. That's what the pasuk here talks about. And the medrash does mention, a Chanukah sheyesh bad lekas neres, a dedication that has the lighting of the candles. Where does the lighting of the candles exactly relate to the Chanukah? That becomes the main point over here. And the third source, or the next source that the Ramban brings, which is a Medrash Tanchum and a Medrash Rabbah, where Hashem tells Moshe to tell Aaron, Al tisyarei, don't be afraid, don't feel bad. L'gdolim izayis atamuchan, you're destined for greater things. HaKarbanis calls the man Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim Hinoyagin. When it comes to Karbanis, as long as the Beis HaMikdash is around, they're performed. When it comes to the candles will eternally burn. And also the blessings that I gave you, the Birchas Kohanim, the priestly blessings that I give you, they'll be eternal. So according to the Medrash, Hashem says to Aaron, he comforts Aaron by saying, you're feeling badly, you're not participating in the Mishkan, in the dedication of the Mishkan. The Karbanos of the Mishkan are temporary. If you have a base, you have a Mishkan, you've got the service in the Mishkan. If you don't, you don't. The Nesiim brought Karbanos, brought sacrifices. Sacrifices is something that doesn't last. If without a Mishkan, it can't last. However, the menorah, that will last eternally. The Birchas Kohanim, blessings of the Kohanim, which is actually in last week's parsha, before the Torah discusses the Chanukah Sanasim, what the princes brought, that's where Aaron is told the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim, of blessing the Jewish people. So the fact that parsha is sandwiched between the Birchas Kohanim and the menorah is the message to Aaron that even though you didn't participate in the Chanukah, however, you're destined for greater things, because what you will be doing will be eternal. The Birchas Kohanim and the menorah. The Ramban asks, why is the menorah eternal? When the Karbanos stop, the lighting of the menorah stops. So what kind of lighting of the menorah are we talking about? Therefore the Ramban says we must be talking about Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the dedication and the lighting of the candles that's being referred to here, that is meant to comfort Aaron. Okay, so now we have to go back to the questions. The first questions that the Ramban asked on Rashi, which led him to this answer. The first question was, why talk about the menorah more than other parts of the divine worship in the Mishkan? The answer is, because we're not talking about the avodah, we're not talking about the divine worship in the Mishkan per se. When Hashem comforts Aaron with the candles, with the menorah, he doesn't mean the menorah that was regularly lit. He means alluding to a future episode of the lighting of the menorah as part of the rededication of the Beis HaMikdash through Aaron's descendants to Chashmonayim. Okay. The second question is, what was bothering Aaron? What bothered him? Now, if what bothered him was, as the Ramban mentions, if what was bothering Aaron was the fact that he didn't bring anything voluntarily like the other princes did, so the Ramban says, well, the menorah is not voluntary, it's also an obligation, it's also a mitzvah. So how is he being comforted? What's the answer? So the answer again has to be the lighting of the menorah by the Chashmonayim. But wasn't that also a mitzvah? Or was that voluntary? It wasn't voluntary. Once they were able to do the mitzvah, they did the mitzvah. So again, how do we understand how is Aaron being answered? How is he being comforted by talking about Hanukkah? So I like to suggest the following. The Ramban means to say that, as Ramban says, the starting point for the Ramban is, when the Ramban explains what bothers Aaron is the fact that he didn't voluntarily bring anything for the dedication. what bothered Aaron by not bringing something voluntarily, even though again he is the Mishkan, right? He is the Mishkan. And he brought the sacrifices, but they weren't voluntary, and therefore, a voluntary gift, a voluntary participation, that is the greatest, that's how you show that you really want this. You know, if I'm obligated to have to bring the karbanos, if I'm obligated to do something, so it's true, I can do it with a lot of enthusiasm, I can do it with joy, but if I really want to show how much I want something, if I really want to show how much I want and I love the divine worship of Hashem, the best way to show that would be to voluntarily bring something, like the Nesiim did. They didn't have to bring what they brought, but on their own, they realized that this is how they should participate. This is how they should show their appreciation and their love for this opportunity that they have of the Mishkan. Aaron is obligated. He's the Kohen. Hashem says, you've got to do the service there. And you've got to perform certain karbanos to dedicate your service to the Mishkan. But without doing something voluntary, Aaron doesn't have the chance to show how much he wants it. And that bothers him. It bothers him. Perhaps there was something wrong in the fact that he did not bring something voluntary to show how much he desires this opportunity, how much he desires the closeness of Hashem that we have now because we have the Mishkan. That's what he was missing. So what did Hashem say to him? Hashem said to him that, Hashem told him about Hanukkah. So what was Hashem telling him about Hanukkah? So we know that there is a difference between Hanukkah and Purim. This is a famous idea that's brought out about Hanukkah and Purim, the difference between Hanukkah and Purim. On Purim we have an obligation to have a festive meal. It's one of the obligations of Purim. On Hanukkah there's a custom to have festivities, but there's no obligation to have a festive meal, to have a seudah. Why? So the commentary of Bayis Chodesh, known as the Bach, and the Tur Shulchan Aruch explains, because it depends on what the nature of the miracle was. When it came to Purim, Haman wanted to physically destroy us. There was nothing that was going to appease him. He wanted us obliterated. He wanted us gone. And therefore, when we praise Hashem for the salvation, when we praise Hashem for the miracle that saved us, the miracle that saved us was we were physically saved, and therefore we express our thanks to Hashem in a physical way, celebrating our physical salvation. When it comes to Hanukkah, Hanukkah was a different ballgame. Hanukkah was not a problem physically. We weren't facing physical annihilation. If we would become Yevanim, if we would become Hellenists, we'd be fine. But that's not what happened. It was a spiritual decree. It was a spiritual salvation. And therefore, the essential praise is hollow, is thanksgiving to Hashem, not physical. The Bach elaborates. The decree Haisa was because, this is the Bach's interpretation of the cause of why the decrees came upon the Jewish people from the Greeks that we needed to be saved from. Hagazera Haisa al shehisrashlu ba'avoda. The Gezerah came, the decree came because the Jewish people were weak in their divine worship. There was something lacking. Hisrashlus means to be lax. There was some kind of a laxity when it came to divine worship. They did not hold, it doesn't elaborate what that means exactly. But from the Kohanim's point, from the Jewish people's point, from somebody's point, there was some kind of a laxity, a weakness, a lack of enthusiasm and love for the avodah, for the divine worship that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, the decree was to take away the divine worship from them. Kedetanya b'Braisa, as the Braisa teaches us, Shagazar alein oisei harasha, that the wicked Antiochus decreed levatal tamid, to take away the tamid, the daily sacrifice. V'oid amar lahem, and another thing that Antiochus said is mitzvah achas yesh biyadam. There's one special mitzvah that the Jewish people possess. Im atem evatam oisa miyadam, if you, meaning everyone else, if you will take that away from them, kfar heim avudim, they're lost. They can't last without it. The Ezeh, which one is that? Zeh hadlakas menorah. That's the lighting of the menorah. Shekasav ba la'alois ner tamid, to kindle a ner tamid, a candle of tamid, of continuity, a continuous. Ner tamid means a continuous light. But in this case, it's interpreted as kol zman shemadlikin oisan tamid hem oimdim. They have a continuity if they light it. So omdim v'timu kol hashmanim. That's why we find this idea that the Greeks went and made impure all the oils. They made it impossible to light the menorah because they understood that by taking away this part of the divine worship, taking away the avoda of the menorah, that now would cause the Jewish people to be lost. So the Bach says, because the Jewish people were lax in their they were lax regarding the divine worship, it was taken away. The karbanos were taken away, the menorah was taken away, and the menorah especially, because Antiochus understood that the Jewish people have a continuity because of the lighting of the menorah. Therefore, he took it away. Ukshachazru b'tshuva, when they repented, limsar nafsham al-avoda, to really give up their lives to get back to divine worship. Hayshiyam Hashem ayadei kohanim, ayadei avoda b'beis Hashem. Hashem saves them through the Kohanim, those who perform the worship in the Beis HaMikdash. Al Kain Nasa Hanes Gam Kain B'Neres. And therefore a miracle took place also in the candles. Tachas Asher Heru Nafsham, because they aroused their souls, Lamas Al Kiyam Aveda, to be willing to die in order to bring back the divine worship. Lefikach Leikavam Ela Lahalal Lahaydash Yaveda Shabbalay. And therefore Chanukah is about giving praise to Hashem through Hallel, through reciting Hallel, giving thanks to Hashem, because that is the worship of the heart. So the Bach puts Hanukkah in the following context. Hanukkah is a spiritual salvation. Hanukkah is where, because we were nisrasha, we were lax in the divine worship, it was taken away. The manifestation of taking away the divine worship, one manifestation of that was especially the taking away of the lighting of the menorah. Because Antiochus understood, we the Jewish people have a continuity, a spiritual continuity, if we have the menorah. Otherwise we're lost. What happened was, when the Jewish people repented, was, if the sin that caused the decree against them was because they were lax in the avodah, they now did the exact opposite. They were ready to give up their lives to get back the divine worship. And because of that, a miracle took place in the candles, in the nearest of the menorah. Meaning, because the menorah was especially part of Antiochus taking away the divine worship of the Jewish people, because that would take away their ability to exist. Now, when they did Shiva, when they repented, and they were willing to give up their lives to get back to divine worship, a miracle took place in the candles to show that they will continue, they will spiritually survive. Why? Because instead of being nisrashal, instead of being lax, they now went to the extreme opposite. They're ready to give up their lives to get back to divine worship. That is how the Bach puts Hanukkah into context. According to this, we can say that Aaron is comforted because Aaron had a desire. He wanted to show that, he was afraid. Maybe because I didn't voluntarily bring anything towards the dedication. That's not showing my desire, my love for the avodah. Maybe there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my love for the divine worship. So Hashem says to Aaron, no, don't worry. There's nothing wrong from your part, because actually your desire for the avodah, for the divine worship, will manifest itself later on in your descendants, when they will show their desire for the avodah, when they will bring back the avodah to the Jewish people on Hanukkah, because the avodah was taken away because the Jewish people were lax and weakened their commitment to the avodah, and your children show that they want the avodah so much that they're willing to give up their lives for it. And that's what brought it back to the Jewish people. And that's why there was a miracle in the Hanukkah menorah. Because the Hanukkah menorah now showed that because the Jewish people desired the avodah, they cherished the avodah, therefore they were given back the menorah, which gives them their spiritual continuity. So therefore, Aaron was afraid by not voluntarily participating in the dedication. That showed there's something wrong with his love and his commitment to the avodah. The answer is no, there's nothing wrong with your commitment. Don't worry. Your commitment will manifest itself in your generations later, when the Chashmonaim bring back the avodah to the Jewish people, because they show how much they cherish it. So when the first medrash that the Ramban brings down says Aaron is going to be comforted, although he didn't participate in this dedication. He will his descendants will participate in the Chanukah later on that will have the lighting of the menorah in it. That means to say, don't be bad that you're not participating in the Chanukah, showing that you don't desire, that you don't cherish the avodah, that the avodah is not special to you. It'll manifest itself later. It manifests itself in the Chanukah that your descendants will do, which will have in it the lighting of the menorah, which will have in it a lighting of the menorah that was taken away because they didn't cherish the avodah, and a miracle was performed in it to show them that they do show the love for the avodah, and that Hashem is going to allow them to have that spiritual continuity through the menorah. And then when the other medrash says that your portion is greater because your lighting of the menorah will be eternal, that means that in the Hanukkah menorah every year, when we light the Hanukkah menorah, we remember the Chashmonoims bringing back the avodah to the Jewish people, because when the Jewish people lost it because they didn't cherish it, the Kohanim brought it back because they did show how much they cherished it, willing to give up their lives. And that is what we remember every year. And every year Aaron is told, for all generations, your dedication to the menorah, your dedication to the Chanukah HaMizbeach, the fact that you felt so bad that you couldn't participate, and perhaps you didn't show your love for the avodah, that will manifest itself in the Hanukkah menorah. And that will be manifest for all generations, because all generations will always be remembering what the Kohanim did. They will always remember how the Kohanim brought back the avodah to the Jewish people because they cherished it. And that cherishing that they showed comes from your love for the avodah. So don't feel bad that you didn't participate. It doesn't show anything lacking on you. On the contrary, what you show now, how much you're distressed now over the fact that you didn't show how much you love, really shows how much you love it, and that will manifest itself in later generations.